Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Purendra Prasad, working in the Department of Sociology, University of Hyderabad. Today I will be talking about medical pluralism. This is 8th module in Sociology of Health course. What is medical pluralism? The coexistence of different systems of medicine in a particular society. What does that mean? It simply means that pluralism, like religious pluralism, legal pluralism, or in terms of medical pluralism. The way different religions actually coexist. In India, you have Hinduism, Buddhism, Sikhism, Islam, Christianity, Jainism, and so on and so forth. So you have different religious groups actually coexisting, where each one is allowed to actually practice their own kind of beliefs without impinging on the others' beliefs and freedom. Similarly, in medical pluralism, you have different systems. Modern allopathic medicine, you have Ayurvedic medicine, which is one of the oldest medical systems in India. You have Unani, you have Siddha, you have homeopathy, you have Tibetan medicine. A lot of these medical systems actually coexist in a society. Why is it that all these different systems of medicine still coexist? That's one question. Second one, are these medical systems actually modern, or some actually need to be called as non-modern? Who defines them as modern and how is it defined? I think these are some of the questions that today in the module we will be talking about. So when you look at the multiple kind of systems of medicine that's prevalent in India, okay, one of the principle underlying this medical pluralism is that to provide more efficient treatment to all the categories of people, addressing different kinds of disease situations. Okay, so that's the purpose. So ultimately, to improve the health status of people. Okay, the plural medical systems actually emerged in India because from the earliest period, before Vedic period onwards, there was a system of medicine which existed in terms of the local or indigenous kind of system of medicine, which is later on called as Ayurveda. Okay, so Ayurveda actually came from the earliest period onwards. And when you look at the kind of modifications and the kind of changes that as a system of medicine it underwent during the pre-Vedic period, Vedic period, and then during the Buddhist period, and then during the colonial period, the post-independent period, again within post-independent period, if you look at before 1970s, and after 70s and after 90s, when globalization and neoliberal kind of policies are implemented. So as a system of medicine, Ayurveda itself underwent a lot of changes in trying to cater to the needs of the people. However, the institutionalized practices of this Ayurvedic medical system was at its peak during certain period where the rulers actually patronized it, and it declined when there was no patronage available for this system of medicine. Okay. And also when you look at at different historical points of time, there was an opportunity to interact with other systems of medicine. It's not that Ayurveda actually developed as a pure kind of a science, pure medicine, without interacting, without actually incorporating the elements of other systems of knowledge. So this is where we need to understand that historically each system of medicine actually tried to incorporate several elements from other systems of medicine and other kind of social ethos and social systems. Okay. Let me now look at how Ayurveda actually gave rise to what is called as Siddha medicine in Tamil Nadu. That's primarily because of what kind of materia medica which is available in a particular region. So the Ayurveda actually believed in the theory of balance in terms of bodily equilibrium, both in terms of the physical and in terms of the social environment. So it believed that what is best in the local region would actually provide the best cure or best kind of food. Okay. In Tamil Nadu, because of the availability of certain kind of resources, Siddha medicine emerged. And during the colonial period, the Mughals and other rulers actually brought Unani system of medicine from Persia and from Arabic countries, and because Unani was patronized by the Nizams and it grew, but the Nizam rulers actually also patronized Ayurveda, Unani at the same time. So there was a lot of interaction in terms of these two systems of medicine that took place during the pre-colonial period. During the colonial period, the British actually brought the English medicine, or what we call in terms of allopathic medicine, into India. Allopathic medicine actually gained its dominance and supremacy because of, again, the patronage by the colonial rulers. When you look at the way allopathic medicine initially was trying to find its roots in India, it did not get acceptability from the people. The local kind of materia medica was very effective, and in fact the medical professionals of the allopathy also found that English medicine is not actually suitable in tropical conditions. So there was a lot of interaction between the local systems of medicine and that of English medicine as well during the colonial period. It's a different matter that David Arnold in his book Colonizing the Body talks about how this allopathic medicine actually gained its supremacy by subordinating and subjugating other systems of medicine and knowledge systems during that period. So it's a political factors that again reshaped the allopathic medicine and that of the Ayurvedic and other medicine. In the post-independent period, if we find without much discussion and debate, Nehru, the then Prime Minister of India, believed that modernity and development can be achieved by actually adapting the modern medicine, and therefore there was absolute patronage of the government to the allopathic medicine by undermining the other systems of knowledge. So there was less patronage. The institutionalized practices actually were very, very weak. However, all the systems of medicine survived, existed in post-independent India. This is where Charles Leslie in his book Asian Medical Systems actually describes in detail how medical pluralism actually coexisted, and he also says that Asian systems of medicine, what he means is all these systems of medicine actually have their own epistemologies, there is consistency, there is logic, there is scientific reasoning. So each of these systems have its own epistemology, which is good enough to actually withstand on its kind of feet. So Charles Leslie, in fact, makes a distinction between modern medicine and that of what is called as non-modern or traditional medicine. Traditional medicine, he means that Ayurveda, Unani, Siddha and other systems of medicine. He calls this modern medicine as cosmopolitan medicine. You know, this medicine, actually modern medicine is called as Western medicine, cosmopolitan medicine. He calls, Charles Leslie calls it as cosmopolitan because over a period of time, Ayurveda, homeopathy and Unani also acquired the status like that of the modern medicine in a limited kind of context. Today you have huge kind of corporate Ayurvedic kind of healthcare services available. Similarly, homeopathy. So cosmopolitan is something that represents not simply allopathy, but the way it is incorporated into the market and other mechanisms. So all that we are trying to understand is that while Western scholars have been fascinated with coexistence of medical pluralism, the other critical dimension that we need to look at is that coexistence actually is based on unequal kind of power relations. While modern Western or allopathic system actually commands the dominant kind of a status, the other systems of medicine actually have subordinate and inferior kind of a position. There is always a kind of a dichotomy that one is modern, one is actually not modern, meaning that non-modern and traditional medicines are static and not actually able to incorporate the latest set of knowledge and systems of knowledge, which is not so. A lot of scholars and medical anthropologists argued that even when you call them as quote unquote traditional medicine, they have been incorporating a lot of innovations and new ideas into its own corpus of knowledge. That's one. Second one, when they are coexisting, there is all the time emulation and imitation of the Western systems of knowledge. Madhulika Banerjee, who did her PhD thesis on Ayurveda, says that the standardization, commercialization, pharmaceuticalization, these three processes actually resulted in inducing lot of Ayurvedic medicine to behave exactly like that of allopathic medicine. The demands that are placed on Ayurvedic medicine are that it needs to actually produce medicines which are replicable and can be administered similar to allopathic medicine. She argues that why should Ayurveda actually behave exactly like that of allopathic medicine? It has its own epistemology, it has its own scientific kind of parameters on which it can actually explain its logic rationale. However, the market and the commercial dimensions of medical systems actually have been increasingly demanding that Ayurveda and other systems of medicine actually be mainstreamed, incorporated into the mainstream kind of medical systems. So there is a vested interest or the kind of commercial interest that shapes the systems of knowledge. And the other dimension is that there is even allopathic system of knowledge did not actually develop on its own platform. It actually incorporated a lot of other medical knowledge systems into its corpus of knowledge over a period of time. And this is where one needs to actually look at how within within 200 years one system of knowledge actually gained its supremacy and started actually determining the position of the other systems of knowledge. However, in the Indian context, I think all these systems of knowledge coexist. People have been actually, moving from one system of knowledge to another system of medical knowledge in terms of seeking services, primarily because their confidence in terms of actually getting cured is something that is dependent on which one works better. So people have been very pragmatic in trying to move from one medical system to another medical system and have been operating. But what we are trying to actually discuss from this module is that we need to critically engage with why different systems of knowledge actually exist. Is it actually improving the health status of people, and why is it that state and market and other actually actors have been influencing different systems of knowledge differently? These are all important factors for us to understand in terms of looking at the way body and health actually has been conceptualized, because bodily kind of a health is conceptualized by each of these systems of knowledge differently, and that is very important for sociologists to understand, and then look at these pluralism, what it means. Would pluralism only mean diversity, or would pluralism mean actually operation of certain power relations over other systems of knowledge? That actually provides us the basis for basis to understand the deeper dimensions of medical pluralism. Let me sum up this module. What we have been talking about is that medical pluralism is a concept which provides us a kind of different systems of knowledge coexisting, which can contribute to the human health to improve. I think we looked at how this diversity actually has within each system also changed from pre-colonial period to the colonial period to that of the post-independent period. Now, if you look at each of these systems of knowledge, including Ayurveda for instance, which has moved from magico-religious kind of knowledge to that of empirical, rational kind of knowledge system during the Buddhist period. That's the time where a lot of deep documentation has been done in terms of experimentation and in terms of mastering the anatomy of the body, etc. So there was a scientific kind of an approach that was developed during the Buddhist period, and how that again got incorporated into the Hindu or the Sanskritic kind of models of medicine. So when we talk about Ayurveda in post-independent period, we are talking about it as a Ayurveda in today's context, the way it acquired a different form. So there is no homogeneous kind of Ayurvedic system of knowledge from pre-colonial to post-independent period. Similarly, we are talking about allopathic medicine. Okay, it incorporated a lot of elements from other systems of knowledge as well. So what we are talking about is the way allopathic knowledge actually is practiced. So when we talk about pluralism, we are not simply talking about the way system of knowledge actually transformed from different historical points of time. We are also talking about practitioners associated with it. We are talking about social and cultural organization that actually is revolving around these systems of knowledge. The institutionalization of processes are very important. Okay? If you look at Unani medicine, today you have corporate kind of a Unani medical hospital, you have government Unani Medical Hospital, you have small kind of clinics, you also have a lot of Unani medicine which is dispensed in small stores and the food kind of provision stores. So, the way practice actually practice and practitioners actually in each of these systems are very important, because the way each system actually adapted to the current needs of the society. But what is significant is that the way biomedicine actually is determining the corpus of knowledge that is actually is a part of other systems of knowledge is where we need to understand that it is power that determines the systems of knowledge, and the dominance, the hierarchy, the hegemony of a particular system of knowledge need to be understood within a particular political context, and that is where medical pluralism helps us to understand the sociological dimension.